Hello listeners and welcome to today's Cult News. I'm your speaker Casey, and for this episode we have a short roundup of week 5 in the Danny Masterson retrial. As always, if you want in-depth coverage straight from the courtroom, you can check out TonyOrtega.org or follow Tony Ortega on Twitter. He is the trial's pool reporter, or you can check out Aaron Levin-Smith's Growing Up in Scientology for more direct from the court coverage. This is week 5 of the Danny Masterson retrial, a long-time Scientologist who has been accused of the forcible rape of 3 women between 2001 and 2003. Throughout the retrial, we have heard about Scientology's duplicitous role in aiding an alleged abuser, and this week has been relatively quiet compared to last week's explosive time in the courtroom. Closing arguments came from the prosecution and the defense during the early part of the week. Deputy DA Ariel Anson offered the first closing arguments for the prosecution, with Tony Ortega announcing that it was an improvement for the prosecution's closing arguments than the last trial. Philip Cohen for the defense then followed up with closing arguments, with Ortega commenting on the earnest efforts of the defense as well, with Philip Cohen focusing mostly on what he believed were inconsistencies within the testimonies from each Jane Doe. And then DA Mueller stepped up to give the final rebuttal in the prosecution's closing arguments. It was a powerful gut punch to the defense. Mueller picked out words that Cohen had used and offered clarity. Cohen described Danny Masterson as a gentleman, helping vulnerable women up to the shower or to bed when they had drunk too much alcohol. Mueller offered that Masterson had many chances to stop what he was doing, to examine each fork in the road before he invited victims over, before he spiked their drinks, before he gave them those drinks, before he took them upstairs, before he assaulted each one. He had a chance to stop each and every time, at each of these decisions, but he didn't. Mueller asked the jury, was Masterson a gentleman when he was dragging one of the women across the room by her hair and slamming her into a door? Was he a gentleman when he viciously assaulted one woman, causing anal tearing and bleeding? The testimonies and the closing arguments have been extremely graphic, and I won't dive into them too much here, but if you do want the full picture, you can check out the daily reports from the courthouse on the underground bunker. And by the middle of the week, the jury had the case. As of today, May 20th, the jury are still deliberating after requesting to see a few video clips and after asking a few questions. They finished day 3 of jury deliberations yesterday on Friday afternoon, which means that we have entered the weekend, with the jury due to continue deliberations on Monday. If we have an update next week, I'll be sure to let you know. The initial trial took a few weeks before it was announced that the jury were deadlocked. We will have to hope for a better outcome this time. But until we have a verdict, Judge Charlene Olmedo has announced that there will be further investigations taking place into how Scientology's attorneys gained access to discovery materials in the Danny Masterson case, when Scientology should never have had access to those files to begin with. Join me tomorrow for more cult news. I'm your speaker Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast.